Caribbean tensions rose overnight after a U.S. F-35 and Venezuelan forces were involved in a dangerous aerial encounter.
November 28, 2025, 9:10 a.m. local time. The Caribbean Sea looks impossibly calm. Dark blue water, a quiet coastline near La Guaira, Venezuela. No explosions, no warning sirens, just a morning that feels normal. Then the radar stations light up. Venezuelan coastal radar picks up a fast-moving target cutting through the sky at Mach 1.2. The track is clean, sharp, and confident. It is not drifting. It is not lost. It is moving like it knows exactly where it is going. The target is an American F-35, a $92 million stealth fighter. And it is not just flying. It is sending gigabytes of real-time data back to the Pentagon every second, feeding a live picture of the region as it moves. In this corridor, that matters because the route below is tied to America's $6.4 billion trade flow stretching from Miami to New Orleans. This is why one radar contact becomes a regional problem in seconds. On the American side, the warning picture is already understood. The closest serious muscle in the area is USS Valor, DDG-125, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer sitting 150 nautical miles away. It carries 96 missile launch cells and a crew of 327 sailors. Its firepower is heavier than Venezuela's entire northern fleet. And if the situation turns, one chain of alerts can pull an $800 million response window in under 8 minutes. But none of that is visible from the shoreline. At 9:22 a.m., the first clear anomaly hits the Venezuelan radar feed. The F-35 track shows up again, still at Mach 1.2, now 245 miles offshore. The return bounces on the screen like a heartbeat the operators cannot ignore. It is faint, then sharp, then faint again. Not gone, just hard to hold. Within 90 seconds, the alerts race upward. Operators push the contact report to senior command and then into the political room. Inside Miraflores Palace, President Nicolas Maduro Moros sees a single picture that changes the tone of the day. One American aircraft. No friendly identification, no casual explanation, just a stealth jet moving in a zone Venezuela calls sensitive. Venezuela frames it as a sovereignty test, and the answer is immediate. Operation Bolivar is launched. At 9:30 a.m., the order goes out to scramble 2 SU-30 fighters. Each jet is valued at $50 million. Each is loaded with air-to-air missiles. The plan is simple on paper. Find the intruder, force it away, and prove control of the air. By 9:42 a.m., the SU-30s are already moving. They push out over the Caribbean, flying fast and low at first, then climbing into the hunt. Their radars sweep hard, trying to keep a stable picture on a target built to deny stability. The pilots do not need to see the F-35 with their eyes. They just need their radar to hold long enough to make the next decision. And that is where the real danger starts. Because the faster the SU-30s close, the less space there is for everyone to stay calm. In a corridor like this, one wrong read on a radar screen can trigger a response chain that neither side can easily stop. And out beyond them, USS Valor is close enough to see the same story forming. If you want Act 2, hit subscribe and stay with me, because the next step is when radar stops being a warning and starts becoming a countdown. By 9:47 a.m., the airspace north of Venezuela no longer feels routine. The 2 SU-30 fighters push farther out over the Caribbean, their radar sweeps widening as they search for a picture that will stay still. The contact ahead remains stubbornly present. It does not drift away. It does not rush in. It holds a steady course at Mach 1.2, moving like it is, pacing the response rather than reacting to it. On Venezuelan radar screens, the return behaves strangely. It sharpens just enough to demand attention, then fades before a clean hold can form. The operators adjust gain, angle, and sweep timing, but the result is always the same. The target never disappears. It simply refuses to become predictable. That behavior changes the mood inside the command center. This is not a technical glitch. It is not weather. It is a deliberate pattern. The aircraft is staying close enough to force action while denying the clarity needed to make that action comfortable. Every update adds pressure without offering certainty. The SU-30 pilots feel that pressure in the cockpit. They are trained to trust their instruments, but the instruments are fighting back. The radar picture looks usable for a few seconds, then slips a few miles offline. The pilots adjust again, trying to close the geometry and trap the target in a clean approach. Each time, the sky refuses to cooperate. At this distance, speed is no longer the problem. Decision is. From Venezuela's perspective, the interpretation hardens with every mile closed. The F-35 is still inside a corridor the government considers sensitive. It is not turned away. It has not acknowledged the intercept. It continues to fly as if the response itself is being measured. Inside the command room, the question shifts. This is no longer about identification. It is about control. Allowing the aircraft to remain unchallenged sends one message. Forcing it away sends another. And the longer the radar picture stays unstable, the more it feels like the initiative is slipping. The order is passed down with growing urgency. Tighten the intercept. Do not let the aircraft define the encounter. The SU-30s accelerate and climb, seeking a better radar angle. For a brief moment, the return firms up. The outline looks wider, smoother, long enough to convince the pilots that they finally have something they can act on. But the lock does not last. The F-35 adjusts again, not sharply, not aggressively. A controlled ship that breaks the picture without breaking contact. The aircraft remains close, still feeding data back to American systems, still denying the Venezuelan side the clean confidence they want. Inside the command center, voices rise. The radar operators argue over settings. The tactical officers argue over intent. Every second spent debating is a second the aircraft remains where it is. And that is the most dangerous part, because hesitation at this range carries its own risk. The closer the fighters get, the fewer options remain. Turning away now looks weak. Pressing closer risks escalation. Out over the water, USS Valor is watching the same convergence unfold. American radar sees two Venezuelan fighters closing on a single U.S. aircraft. The destroyer's systems track the shrinking distance and the tightening geometry. The crew understands the same truth the Venezuelan operators are beginning to feel. Once certain lines are crossed, events move faster than orders. No missiles are launched, no warnings are exchanged, but the situation has shifted. This is no longer a test of detection, it is a test of nerve. And with every mile closed, the margin for restraint narrows, turning radar returns into a countdown that neither side can stop once it reaches zero. The shift from warning to action happens quickly. Inside Venezuela's command structure, the situation is no longer treated as observation or signaling. The radar picture has repeated itself too many times to dismiss. The American aircraft entered the corridor. Venezuelan fighters were launched. The aircraft did not turn away. To Venezuelan leadership, that sequence closes the debate. Operation Bolivar is formally activated. The order is short and unambiguous. Two SU-30 fighters are cleared to intercept with force. This is no longer a maneuver meant to escort, shadow, or pressure. It is meant to stop the aircraft and assert control over airspace Venezuela considers its own. The SU-30s tighten their formation and move into the final intercept geometry. Radar confidence is still not perfect, but it is now judged sufficient. The fighters align their approach, one taking the lead, the other holding support position. Both aircraft commit to the same outcome. At this point, distance no longer offers an off-ramp. The first missile is launched. It separates cleanly from the SU-30, accelerating hard toward the F-35's projected flight path. The missile's exhaust flashes briefly before thinning into the sky. Seconds later, a second missile follows, reducing the margin even further. The intent has shifted completely. This is no longer symbolic. It is physical. The F-35 reacts immediately. The aircraft breaks course, shedding speed and altitude in a rapid attempt to survive the engagement. Defensive systems engage. For a brief moment, the first missile is forced off its path. The sky opens just enough to suggest that escape might still be possible. Then the second missile connects. The impact is not catastrophic, but it is decisive. The F-35 suffers serious damage. Control inputs no longer respond the same way. The aircraft cannot maintain its flight profile or continue its mission. Altitude drops. Stability degrades. The jet is no longer managing airspace. It is fighting gravity. The pilot declares an emergency. The F-35 turns away from the corridor, no longer gathering data, no longer testing presence. The mission ends instantly. Survival becomes the only objective. A forced descent is unavoidable, and the aircraft diverts to prepare for an emergency landing. On Venezuelan radar, the change is unmistakable. The target that held steady at high speed now slows sharply. Its altitude collapses. Its flight path bends away from the corridor. To operators watching the screen, the message appears clear. The aircraft has been hit. The intercept succeeded. Control has been demonstrated. But the moment carries a consequence far larger than what the radar shows. From the American perspective, this is no longer an interception or a warning exchange. A U.S. aircraft has been struck. Damage has been inflicted. The situation has crossed a line that cannot be redefined or walked back through explanation or restraint. And as the damaged F-35 struggles toward an emergency landing, a second clock is already running, not measured in miles, measured in response. The moment the F-35 takes the hit, the incident stops being an intercept and becomes a strike. On the American side, the warning picture is immediate. Radar confirms what the pilot's emergency call already makes clear. The aircraft has been engaged, and the SU-30 pair is still airborne. There is no longer any room for interpretation, no negotiation window, no friendly misunderstanding. In the chain of command, one conclusion locks in fast. They fired first. That phrase matters because it sets the rules for everything that follows. If the United States treats this as a warning, it invites the next shot. If it treats it as an attack, it has to restore control of the airspace before the situation spirals. That responsibility falls to USS Valor. The destroyer has been watching the geometry tighten since the early radar returns. Now it sees the emergency beacon, the damaged flight path, and the hostile pair still active in the same corridor. The ship does not need to guess intent. It reads the situation as a threat that must be removed quickly and decisively. The order is issued. USS Valor launches 5 SM-6 missiles. The deck stays calm, but the action is violent. One after another, the missiles punch upward and accelerate into the open sky. Their contrails carve bright lines across the morning, climbing fast and angling toward the SU-30s. From the Venezuelan perspective, the response is sudden. Their fighters have just achieved what Caracas wanted: an American aircraft damaged, forced into emergency landing. But the moment they hold in their hands lasts only seconds because the radar picture flips. Now the SU-30 pilots are no longer the hunters. They are the targets. The missiles from USS Valor close with speed that collapses reaction time. The SU-30s try to adjust course, trying to break the lock, trying to outrun the geometry. But the space is too tight and the warning too late. This is not a slow chase. This is a fast, clean removal. The first SM-6 reaches the engagement zone. The lead SU-30 disappears from the radar picture. A second impact follows close behind. The remaining SU-30 brakes and tries to run, but the missiles are already stacked in the sky, layered to ensure the outcome. The next strike hits, and the second SU-30 drops off the screen as well. For a brief moment, the Venezuelan command center stares at the radar feed as if it must be wrong. 2 fighters launched under Operation Bolivar are now gone, not drifting away, not turning back, gone. And USS Valor is not finished with the air picture. The remaining SM-6 missiles continue through the corridor, confirming there is no second wave hiding behind the SU-30 pair. The destroyer's radar holds the zone, sweeping for any new returns that might rise into the gap. Nothing appears, no additional fighters, no clean reinforcements, only the empty space where the SU-30s were seconds earlier. The message is delivered without a speech. Venezuela struck an American aircraft. The United States removed the shooters immediately, and the corridor is now controlled by the side that can act faster. Above the water, the wounded F-35 continues its emergency path away from the danger zone. It is still damaged. The pilot is still fighting to keep it stable, but the air threat behind it has been erased. On Venezuela's radar screens, the outcome is brutal in its simplicity. The intercept became a strike. The strike triggered a response, and the response ended the fight before Venezuela could even reset the picture. What began as pressure on a radar screen has now become a hard lesson. Once the first shot is fired, control belongs to whoever can close the loop fastest, and USS Valor just proved it can. The moment the SU-30 returns disappear from the radar picture, the airspace goes quiet in a way that feels unnatural. USS Valor does not celebrate. It confirms. Radar sweeps the corridor again and again, looking for a second pair, a late reinforcement, anything that would suggest the engagement is still unfolding. Nothing rises into the gap. No new tracks. No fresh intercept. The picture stabilizes into something brutally simple. The Venezuelan fighters are gone, and the immediate threat has been removed. Only then does the focus shift fully to the damaged F-35. The aircraft is still airborne, but it is no longer operating like a platform with options. It is operating like a platform with one goal: stay level, stay controllable, get down safely. Every mile becomes a calculation of stability, not strategy. On the Venezuelan side, the command center is forced to process two realities at once. They achieved a hit, and they lost the shooters. Operation Bolivar was meant to prove control. For a brief window, it looked like it did. An American aircraft was forced into an emergency landing, and the corridor seemed to bend under Venezuelan pressure. But the next window arrived even faster. The U.S. response did not argue. It did not posture. It removed capability. Two SU-30 fighters went from active returns to empty screen in the span of a single decision loop. That speed becomes the real message of the incident, because this standoff was never only about one aircraft. It was about thresholds. How close can an American aircraft fly without being challenged? How far can Venezuela push before it triggers a response? How quickly the United States will move once a strike lands? By the end of the exchange, those thresholds are no longer theoretical. They are measured, recorded, and understood by both sides. Venezuela learns what it costs to fire first and stay exposed. The United States learns how fast the corridor can ignite when a single missile connects. And everyone watching the radar learns the same cold truth. In modern air confrontations, the most dangerous moment is not the warning. It is the first irreversible hit. As the F-35 descends toward an emergency landing, the airspace behind it stays empty. Not because the corridor is safe, because the corridor has been defined. And the next time those radar returns appear in the same place, both sides will remember exactly how quickly this one escalated and how hard it was to stop once it started. If you want the next breakdown, hit subscribe. Think of it as keeping your radar on without the blinking.